we got a quick bio on you, and what brought you over to America. So why don't we start in with the like I think you said you wanted to start in with the Return of the Giants or the Nephilim or something.
Yeah, I think your audience might be more attuned to that sort of offbeat side of my career. It's nonetheless high journalism. It's Return of the Giants covered a tremendous UFO wave in Israel that went from 1987 to 1999. And in the midst of this wave, by the way, it was front page news in Israel. There's nothing marginal about this wave. I would guess at least 10% of the population saw very, very vivid UFOs in that period. In the midst of that period, 1993 was the peak year, and it stopped at the end of 1994. The beings, or whatever, well, there's the beings, let's leave it at that, who were in these UFOs, made numerous visitations in Israel. And the witnesses, well, what can you say? They didn't know each other, but they all described the same giants.
Wow.
In all but one case, and we'll get to the exceptional giant later, but all the witnesses, all of them, works, were women aged 48 and 49 who lived mostly in a town and an area called Kadima. One lived to the south, about 50 miles from Rishon LeZion, but these women didn't know each other. They did not conspire to fool the nation. They all saw 7-foot giants. They didn't walk. They floated. Mostly, by the way, well, bedrooms were a major place of activity, and I have suspicions, by the way, of that. But nonetheless, what can we say? They were 7 feet. They wore tight, what everyone seemed to call neon clothing. Something about the clothing shone like neon. They had almost no nose, small mouth, black eyebrows was reported twice. Let's see, what else? They would calm the ladies down somehow or another. They would say, don't be afraid, I'm not here to harm you, and it worked like a charm. Women who should have been hysterical suddenly felt that these creatures were warm. Now, let's just go in order of 93, then we'll go backwards to when it all began. But let's start with the giants.
Okay.
All right, there's a town in central Israel called Kadima. The first witness was a lady, Tzipor Carmel, April 20th, 1993. Her house lights up at 6:30 in the morning. She feels compelled to go outside. She's got a big field in her backyard where they grow oranges, and she looks outside and she thinks she sees a new fruit silo. And her first thought was, who would put up a fruit silo in the middle of the night? And then the fruit silo, this is a quote from her. I met, by the way, all these women for my book. I didn't know I was writing a book at the time, but I met them all. She said the silo grew another story, and this is all happening nearly instantaneously. She looks to her right about 10 feet, and there she sees this 7-foot creature, and she knows what's going on. She's figured it out, and it's wearing what she thinks is like a beekeeper's hat. It covers his face, and she says out loud, "Take off your hat so I can see you." And it replied, by the way, they all said the same thing. It replied telepathically. All the women said the same thing. They heard the thoughts in their head. There was no moving mouth, nothing like that. It replied telepathically, "Sorry, I can't do that. That's the way it is." And she watched it, and again, it's examining vegetation, which to me is fantastic. If these creatures came from untold miles through space to land in Kadima to examine vegetation, doesn't make any sense to me. Nonetheless, they all seem to be doing dumb things, and it tells her telepathically, "Go back into your house," and she obeys. And then, 15, 20 minutes later, she comes outside, and it's gone. But it left a very, very distinct circle in the vegetation, and she knew someone who knew something about ufology. Whatever, she had a visitor to look at this indentation, but then the same thing happened on April 10 days later, April 20th. It would have been April 30th. The same thing, landing in the backyard. This time with 10 days of rumor. The whole UFO community of Israel descended on her home. And within the second circle, as in all the circles after that, and there were a whole pile of them in Kadima in 93, there were two factors. One was an oil. You put your hand in the circle, and it was covered in red goo. And, of course, I did that as well. And it, in a way, it was kind of frightening. I mean, who knew what this stuff was? But when I tried to wash it off, it was very stubborn. It really clung to your skin. Later on, we had it examined. What was unusual about this oil was a very, very high rate of cadmium inside the oil. And cadmium is rarely an oil. What's it doing there in the first place? But that's one of the mysteries. And secondly, there were shards of shiny metal, which, again, we had examined all over the world. I took this metal to be examined, well, University of Pisa, University of Birmingham in England. The sighting show, I did 5 episodes with, I was the, I wouldn't say producer, I was the guide for 5 episodes of the sighting series, and their labs examined this material. All the labs had the same result. The material was almost pure silicon, which, by the way, in '93 was an incredibly expensive thing to produce. All the computer industry was making silicon nearly this pure. It was 99.35% silicone, and it, as a hoax goes, to produce, wow, tons of it. All right, many hundreds of pounds of this is a very, very expensive hoax. Nonetheless, that was in her backyard, and we registered it as a, a first breakthrough in Kadima. Then 8 days later, by the way, every single event, every one of them around Kadima happened on a Friday night. Every one of the incidents either happened on a Jewish holiday or on the Sabbath. Every one of them.
Really?
Yeah. That's one of the incredible mysteries of this wave. And there's no easy explanation for this. Next Friday night, it was her neighbor, Shosha Hood, who is the treasurer of Kadima. And by the way, all these women were white-collar professional. Shush was a travel agent. I'm sorry, Seaporters was a travel agent. Shush was a treasurer. We'll go through others. They were all white-collar workers, all 49 years old. There are all kinds of coincidences that aren't coincidences. I'm not sure what they are, but they're not coincidences. The odds are too incredible. Well, Shush Yehud, she was asleep on a Friday night. Her husband didn't awake. All of their husbands didn't awake. The husbands just slept through everything.
Oh, boy.
Only the wife awoke. She's in her bedroom. She's same thing, 7-foot giant floating, tells her she's not afraid. He's not there to harm her. She believes him, thinks he has a friendly face. All the women, not all, but most of the women reported something like this. It floats around her bed, and then that's all she was. And I suggest there was more to it, but we'll get to that as well, I suppose. Next morning, she thinks she has the weirdest dream ever, opens her window, and in her backyard is a circle, just like Seaport's, 4.5 in diameter, 4.5 meters in diameter, quickly tested with the oil and the shards of silicon, the works. Exact same story, and she doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Seaport loves to talk about it. For her, it was a mystical experience. All the other women, enough of this already. They rue the day that this has happened to them. Nonetheless, that's the next one. There's another woman in Kadima who will not...
Barry?
Pardon me?
I was going to mention that Logic Rules in the chat room had a question. I think he probably come in after you said how tall they were, but he was asking how big these giants were and approximately how much they weighed. And I didn't hear you give an approximate weight.
That's crazy. No one had a scale and weighed them.
I thought
They
maybe
were 7 feet tall.
Thought maybe somebody might have guesstimated, just looked at them and gave an approximation.
No one even bothered with that. Okay. Next, after Shush came a very strange encounter. I'll skip the ones that I didn't interview who just didn't ever want to talk about it, and we'll go to a town 3 miles from Kadima. This was in June of '93, if I'm not mistaken, but you don't need to know these. It was all the same period. This Chana Somach, that's the nice lady. Chana Somach has, here's her, it's 3 in the morning on a Friday. She's in the kitchen. Her dog is barking. She comes down to the kitchen. She opens the light. The dog is barking. Suddenly the dog lifts into the air and goes flying into a wall. And, that's pretty darn confusing. So she, again, realizes something weird is going on and tries to go outside, but there's, again, she's blocked by something she can't see. She cannot pass out her kitchen door to outside. And then she sees the usual 7-foot giant looking and examining her pickup truck. And again, I asked the question, do you really travel, I don't know, 1,000 light years to look at somebody's truck? Is that the reason for the trip? But that's what he was doing. He was looking at her truck.
Okay. Paul was asking in the chat room how you weren't just tall aliens or tall humans, like some people on Earth are tall.
Oh, let me finish. Come on. There's irrelevant question. It's answered by the circles, by the ships, by everything else attached to them. All right, back to Hannah. She tries to go outside. She can't. She's blocked by something. And she sees this 7-foot wearing skin tight neon clothing, examining her truck, and she's really, really ticked off. And she says to it, "What did you do to my dog?" That was her first concern. And it turns around and it looks at her and says, "You think I couldn't hurt you as well? Just get out of it, go back to your husband, you're bothering me." Almost word for word, I'd have to get my book for the exact quote, but it told her to stop bothering her or he would hurt her as well. That was her deep, profound conversation with the creature, and then again, usual business, wakes up the husband, he phones a friend, says there's an intruder on the property, they get here, and they find a 4.5 meter circle in the backyard, later examined with the same oil and the same silicone, and no, it really, really didn't stop. I went there with a sightings crew, and my Lord, that place was filled with circles. They chose her for something. There's no understanding except for one thing she showed me and the sightings crew, which repeated itself. She said, 25 years ago, I got pregnant. And she said, I don't know how I got pregnant, but I got pregnant. And she pulls out medical files, 25-year-old medical files. The pregnancy disappeared. She was pregnant for 3 months, woke up one morning, she wasn't pregnant again. Now, I'm mentioning this because the next incident at Kadima wasn't Kadima. The next incident was not Kadima. It was 60 miles away in a place called Rishon LeZion, and this is the story of Batya Shimon. Now, up till now, they have been visiting places on the ground with a yard. They gave themselves a little room to maneuver. Now, remember, in the case of Shosh Yehud, there was no opening. They didn't come through the front door. There was no open window. Somehow these creatures go through walls. Now, that's why I'm thinking this is not a physical presence, because they break physical laws as we know them every which way. Batya Shimon lived on the 7th floor of an apartment building in Rishon. The first night, she's awoken by noise from her living room. She goes outside. The husband sleeps through it all, as usual. And there's a dozen of these giants, all looking the same, by the way. All of them, albino skin, shadows, floating under the same description as everyone else gave. And again, the same telepathic message, don't be afraid, we're not here to hurt you, and she feels warm inside. They're dusting her apartment, and she said they left a foul-smelling powder all through the house. She said it smelled like sulfur. All right, that's the incident, except the next night, there's another beam through a window, the same thing, except this time there are two of them. And they're, again, roaming around, dusting her apartment. One of the creatures goes into the son's bedroom and sees his aquarium. And he gets very excited by the fish and calls his friend over, and they stare at the fish. Again, traveling light years away to see fish doesn't make an ounce of sense to me. Nonetheless, they, for lack of a better word, they beam themselves out of the apartment. She called it a blue light, and they were gone. That's, again, another woman from far away who didn't know the other women and didn't conspire against the nation. And by the summer of 93, the whole country knew about it. And there was a show in Israel in those days. There were 2 TV channels. It's expanded greatly since then. More than half the country watched this show, where Shosh was on and Batya was gone. No, Batya was not on. Batya phoned after the show that said she had a giant encounter. Sipporet was on, Shosh was on, and all kinds of other people I haven't begun to mention were on. In short, the whole country knew that these people weren't lying. that something extremely strange was happening, that there were giants landing in Israel, and this was front-page headline stuff. It wasn't a marginal UFO story. It was at Kadima that I began researching my book, Return of the Giants, and then I did the whole gamut of everybody.
Okay, now Barry, I wanted to make you aware of the fact that we have a guest calling in and ask you, would you like to take the call?
Go ahead.
There it goes.
Hello?
Okay, caller 404, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? This is Don calling from Beaufort, Georgia.
Hey Don, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing well.
You got a question for Barry?
Yeah, I wanted to know on some of these. I was kind of trying to ask in the chat room, but I know he didn't really want to answer earlier. But I just wanted to know if any type of scientific testing was done when he has a lot of really good stories. But I just want to know if he did or conducted any type of scientific testing to kind of back up some of the facts.
I told you we tested the materials. We tested the materials. We tested the sites. Universities worldwide tested the silicon. The TV shows I was on, including Fox TV and Bob Kvyat's, this, I believe it was called The World's Best UFOs, all sent them to labs. The famous Dr. Hold on, it's slipping. I can look it up. The sightings Dr. Leventhal. Oh my goodness gracious, Dr. Levin. It doesn't matter. He was the researcher for the science program, and we'll get to him very shortly. This has been examined by physicists and scientists worldwide, and the results have been tremendously coordinated worldwide. This is no ordinary UFO. This is a very, very researched story.
Yeah. Were there any type of measurements or anything that were taken, or not?
We measured
really?
everything we could get. Let me go on. You'll see it shortly. We measured everything. Everything we could measure, we measured.
Okay, well, I was just trying to ask a question. I don't appreciate you being so rude to me.
Pardon me?
I was just trying to ask a question. I don't appreciate you being so rude to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come off this way, but listen, I'm a very, very thorough journalist, and these are not just stories. These were so thoroughly examined from every aspect that we could arrange. But let me go on. There's much more to tell.
Hello, Don?
Right. Okay, so shall we go on?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, now let's start from the beginning. The very, very beginning was in Haifa in 1987. That was the very first, wow, what an incident it was, as a matter of fact. The first thing you have, oh, by the way, it's Dr. Levengood. I actually went looking it up. Dr. Levengood tested all the materials at the Portlandia Biophysical Lab and John A. Burke at the American Laboratory. All of these tested the materials both from Kadima, and now I'm going to tell you about Shikmona Beach. Now, Shikmona Beach this has got a more biblical side to the story. On September 28th of 1987, Abi Akrai was traveling home. And by the way, this was the evening before Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. As I said, for some reason, holidays and Sabbaths for all of these incidents. He's driving home to Haifa, and he sees what he thinks is a helicopter disabled in the sky above him. Now, usually this highway is jam-packed, but, holidays and whatever. He gets out and watches what he calls a 15-meter-long banana. He calls it a banana, disabled in the sky above the beach. Suddenly, the banana explodes, a giant flash of light, and then off it goes. With this big explosion, he goes home. He can't get anyone to go down to the beach because it's a holiday. The day after, he phones the police. The police direct him to, her name is Hadassah Bell, then the UFO expert of Israel. They go down to Shikmona Beach, and what do they find? They don't just find proof. Imagine, now try and imagine this, and it was tested. We'll tell you what this is. There is burnt into the sands of Shikmona Beach is an imprint of this UFO. And more astounding, it was in the right-hand corner. You actually have an imprint in the vegetation. I have pictures in my book. I'll tell you how to get my book shortly, and you can actually look at this.
Okay.
There is an imprint of the driver of the UFO sitting in front of a dashboard. This is all on the sands of Shikmona Beach. And again, even before, this was the first instance of the UFO wave, but there was so much press coverage from this thing there was an ice cream truck on Shikmona Beach because 10,000 people a day were coming to look at this thing. Now, just so you know, it happened twice more, and then we'll go to the lab results. It happened in 6-month periods. Friday night, Nava Nevi was the next woman who saw the UFO explode over Shikmona Beach, and she calls the police, and there is 100 yards away from the first imprint, there is another burnt imprint of Shikmona, of this UFO on the sands of Shikmona Beach. And then 6 months later, it was Ilan Elat and Ida Biederman. I still remember their names. I had to go and search these people down and interview them. Well, this time they are, we assume, finding a place to make out on the beach, but they're in a little nook, and in comes the UFO, but this one doesn't. It tries, I suppose, to burn an image on the sand, I suppose, because there was a huge explosion, but this time shards, thousands of shards, were splattered all over the beach. Now, the next day, every UFO buff and researcher and scientist that works were at that beach. On the beach, in the sea itself, were these glowing shards, glowing in the water, but you picked them up and they were cool. And, well, they were given to the, oh my goodness, what's its name? It's the Technological Institute of Haifa. And they were tested. First of all, the magnetism around this site of Shikmona Beach was 6,000 times above the normal. The materials were magnesium. We've got all the reports. Now, again, when Sightings hired me for these 5 episodes, I collected the shards. I collected the dirt from the original Ami Akrai, burnt inscription, the works. I had everything you could ask for. This is where Professor Levengood did something amazing on the sighting show. He puts the material that was burnt, the burnt sand, he puts it on a microscope, and there's a camera watching him examine the material. The stuff melts in front of his eyes. From, 130, 140 degrees, that's all the microscope light was. It melted. He concluded on the show that a hydrocarbon with a low melting point was somehow poured onto the sand of Shikmona Beach. No one knows how it was done. No one. But this was a really very, very good physicist confirming what we all knew, that something extremely weird happened at Shikmona Beach. Now, I'm going to go to the part where we start looking at the possibility of biblical connections and certainly of the Nephilim connections to all this. Right now, all we've got are UFOs that do leave ridiculous amounts of evidence. And we've got giants spotted by people who just don't know each other and could never have conspired to make up these stories. But now, above Shikmona Beach, there is something called the Shrine of Elijah. It's a biblical site, about 2,500 years old, when Elijah was alive. Now, if you know the story of Elijah, at that spot, he challenged the Canaanites to a duel. They tethered two bulls, and he said, my God can roast this bull on the spot. Can Baal do that? So the Canaanites spent all night praying and doing whatever religious rites they go through to get the bull cooked, and nothing happened. Next night, Elijah, it's his turn. He sprinkles the bull with water and sap. There's a ray of light, and the bull is cooked on the spot. Around this site, they built a shrine. You go into the shrine, and on the wall, there's a 2,500-year-old carving on the wall that is a spitting image of the UFOs left burning on the sands of Shikmona Beach. Spitting image. Now, the sighting show said it's got to be a coincidence. Maybe he was drawing it back. Other people did not think it was a coincidence. Michael Hesselman from Germany said that is no bat. What you've got here is the same ray that Elijah called from the sky went straight down on the beaches in 1987 in Israel, and there's no explaining why. But this is a direct link between Elijah and, for some reason, Israel in 1987. Some kind of message was being sent. I don't think anyone has interpreted the message, but something was returning to Shikmona Beach and leaving images of itself burnt in the sands. And what can I tell you? As much as could be analyzed scientifically, we analyze scientifically. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. I didn't want to interrupt you again.
Oh, this story goes on.
Okay, well, you also wanted some time to talk about the flotilla, and you got 24 minutes left.
I'll leave it to the end then. Let's properly. First of all, let me tell you where to get the book before I forget. The book is called Return of the Giants. You get it on www.lulu.com, lulu.com. You go there, you'll see a search box, double-click books, and spell my name. My name is spelt C-H-A-M-I-S-H. That's how you spell Chamish. You'll get right to Return of the Giants. I would recommend you get the black and white version. It's a lot cheaper. Or you can download either version onto your computer for $5. That's it. Sent home is a little more expensive. And my website is barrychamish.com. And that'll, well, not so much UFO, that's the politics. But let me add, really, I spent that much time on the book already. We haven't even scratched the surface. I'm going to do one more story of the Giants, and that happened December 23rd of 1994 in the town 10 miles from my house. Yates. Herschel Constantini was the town security officer, the sheriff, in English, I suppose, is with his friend Danny Ezra, and they feel the house move, shake. Now, this is a little village, and there was no trucks there. There's nothing that could cause that. So Daddy opens the door of Ezra's house, and standing in front of him is a 9-foot, what he called metallic giant. He slams the door, and he tells his friend Danny to look out the blinds. And Danny does, and just like a Three Stooges movie, Danny actually fainted. He looked at this thing, and he actually fainted. He had to be revived by Herzl. Herzl calls the police, and he calls the army, and he is, of course, an officer in the army, and he is the town sheriff. And he says, I opened the door, there was a giant. Nobody wanted to come. They thought it was a hoax. Eventually they came when he said who he was. Now what they found were 8.5 kilometers of tracks, but not just normal tracks. These were deep, well, they were 35 centimeters at the heel, at the sole, 5 centimeters at the heel, meaning whatever caused them weighed a ton. Again, for the sightings crew, I jumped on the mud. I couldn't get in a centimeter. This is hard mud. This thing not only just sunk like it weighed a ton, there were normal strides, and there were sudden glides of 12 feet between the strides. And there was a third hole occasionally, which I believe accurately decided had to be a walking stick of some kind. It was perfectly round. Now, the police examined this, and once again, the Israeli public came in droves to see it. 9 feet tall, he says couldn't see a face because there was some sort of haze covering the face, walked like a robot, he said. Now, the public demanded an explanation. The police came, they thought maybe terrorists entered the Moshav, which unfortunately in Israel is a too common occurrence. The police came, the public demanded to know what on earth made the tracks. They didn't know, so they gave responsibility to the Nature Preserve Society. Again, the public want to know what made those tracks. The Nature Preserve Society, the spokesman said the first time around that it was an antelope. No, it was a camel. It was first a camel, then an antelope, and finally he said it was a UFO. I don't know what made them. Now, if it was a camel, of course, it would have been a two-legged camel walking with a cane, and sometimes taking 12-foot glides through the air. Finally, the Nature Preserve Society says, all right, maybe it was maybe it was a UFO. The police, in their final report, decided that it was a cult. It was a mysterious cult. That was their explanation. And by the way, I'd love to join this cult. You get to dress as giants and make impossible trucks in the dirt and scare the town sheriff until his friend faints. It would be a great cult to join. Nobody can explain that giant on your seats. And again, I had this thing filmed. We had plaster casts of the tracks made. You know what? I've got a DVD. It's not, it's a lot of amateur video of a lot of UFOs. I'll leave a phone number. If anyone wants to just get it from me, it's the only way to do it. Just phone 904-315-8079. To repeat, 904-315-8079. And honest folks, it won't be expensive. But you have to see this stuff to believe this stuff. And you can also invite me to speak on this. Now, we're just scratching the surface. You want to go political, that's fine with me. If that's it for Return of the Giants, that's it for Return of the Giants, if that's what you want.
Actually, I think that's your call. That show is for you.
How much time do we have?
About 18 minutes.
All right, I'll just add something. I'll just add a couple more of the issues with the giants. I served in the Israeli Air Force. When I was there, I had an interest in UFOs because in the summer of 1980, the skies over Israel and the world, by the way, it was a worldwide phenomenon, were just filled. I would call them low-flying satellites. They were lights flying in squadrons, except these squadrons could turn 90 degrees in a second. They could do things physically that no machine ever invented by a human probably ever will be, for all we know, can just go, and how do you explain it? A 90-degree turn, like we would do it was an immediate 90-degree turn. These squadrons were doing things that nothing that mankind has ever put up in the sky could do. And I brought my fellow soldiers outside to see this stuff. And within a week, we had the best equipment. I shot missiles at airplanes. We had binoculars. We were trained on everything in the sky. We were sky watchers. This is what we did. Nobody had an explanation, and it was becoming a real argument. I went to the UFO camp. I said there's no other explanation. The other camp was secret weapon. There were two camps fighting in my unit. The minority pro-UFO camp, and the majority is the secret weapon camp. Finally, what I did, we were given lectures all the time by pilots who told us where to aim missiles to bring down jets. In two occasions, I'd be in uniform, of course, and the pilots would come and show us where to aim and which planes have which weaknesses and stuff like that. These are heat-seeking missiles. You just have to know how to aim them, and they gave us some hints. At the end of each meeting, when everyone was gone, I went up to two pilots, and I asked the question, have you ever been scrambled to chase a UFO? A very, very straightforward question. Both pilots gave me this answer. They said yes, and it's not that uncommon. This one told me about a UFO he was chasing over Haifa that took off in a flash and it was gone. This one told me about a blue, circle. I believe he used the word was Magal, a circle. Over Jerusalem, when he gave chase, it took off in a flash. You cannot get this kind of information from the Israeli Air Force unless you're in the Air Force. Our pilots, during that period, were scrambling all the time to attack whatever was over the skies of Israel, at least from the 80s and at least till 1999. I know for a fact that our pilots were called to scramble, and the Air Force never, ever released a word about these operations. There, I did it.
Wow. And all of this
I'll do it one more time, then I'll finish with the flotilla now.
Okay.
It's kind of an important... once again, if you want Return of the Giants, go to lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. There's a search box. Double-click books and write my name. CHAMISH. That'll take you to Return of the Giants. Don't get the expensive color one, or just simply download for $5, and it won't cost you much. The website is barrychamish.com. Now, the flotilla. It is an uncanny thing how everybody has got the issue of Israel landing soldiers on this Turkish boat and killing 9 Turkish humanitarians. In fact, from my point of view and from my writing, and I hope people have a look at the website, and I think I'm going to write about this finally tomorrow. I've been delaying. The question is not what people are asking, which is how could Israel have landed soldiers and shot protesters. The question is why on earth the Israeli Navy would dare endanger the lives of, so they were sending unarmed, literally unarmed. I'm going to go into that 1 second. So they were dropping them into a ship with a few hundred viciously anti-Israeli Turks armed to the teeth, and they dropped soldiers in. Now get ready for this. You won't notice. I've been finding this, that Americans don't understand what the Israeli Navy did. They armed them only with paint gun rifles.
You're kidding.
No, I sure am not. I sure am not. And I'm going to give you a quote. I'm going to give you a quote from two sailors from the Israeli media. Sailor 1, they came and attacked me. I brought them down to the floor. Okay. I took out my paintball gun. They came at me and I shot at their legs. Next sailor, we were told that if they didn't listen, we should shoot their legs with a paintball gun. They had sidearms, which really were of no value when you're being surrounded and your ears are being cut off and you're gutted by knives. The Israeli Navy dropped soldiers into a bloodbath where if they were going to survive, they had to shoot. They were armed with paintball guns. Now look at what the soldier said. What he said is that we came down to speak with them. Instead, we were attacked. Speak with them. Are they out of their minds? Why not just come down with Rice Krispie marshmallow treats and hand them out? You're being dropped on a boat. We're obviously looking forward to you visiting. They've got balloons and somebody in Israel, and I think I know who, and I'm going to tell you why shortly, deliberately started an incident. Deliberately. I was in the Israeli army, and I know what I'm talking about. Nobody drops innocent kids into a bloodbath with paintball guns.
Well, they don't do that here in America.
You don't do that anywhere. Nowhere do you do that. Now, I want you to know I'm going to give you who I'm now at 60% sure was responsible for deliberately sending Israeli soldiers to their deaths, and he's done it before. That's the Defense Minister Ehud Barak. Now, how much time do we have?
We've got 9 minutes.
All right, I'm going to give you a little story that, again, it's indicative of a very complicated story. Now, I fought in the Lebanon War of 1982. My unit was in there from day one. Now, I got out after a month, and I was really shaken. You'd be surprised. War is not as much fun as people say it is. I was shot at a few times and shelled a few times. I was just shaking like a leaf. I didn't have such a good time. So I invited my friend, lovely, lovely girl, Michelle Benishu, just for to a pub in Jerusalem, just to blow off steam. I had to blow off steam. So Michelle arrives, and it's not such a good evening because her brother also went in on the first day of the war and was in hospital with, extreme shell shock. But don't underestimate you can break a brain as much as you can break any other part of a body. And what happened is he was in a religious armored convoy. That was, well, here's the story. Well, what it was, they drove right into a Syrian ambush. It was in a place called Sultan Yaqub. It was a valley that the Syrians had enveloped, and there was no way out. The only way out was in reverse. By the time that dreadful ambush was finished, 23 Israelis were dead. Now, that, of course, changed the war for the prime minister, who was then Anakim. The war had gone very, very well to that point. We were about to install a Christian government that would have been an ally of Israel's. We were about to throw the PLO out and get that wasp out of our hair. The works was going beautifully, but if Begin had won that war, the Labour Party would never have seen power for the foreseeable future. The idea was to get Begin and his Kherut party out of power and somehow maybe even Labour back. Now, 15 years later, I asked Michelle, I said, so you're saying it doesn't make a difference whether you're religious or not before you're going to battle? And she said, not a thing. 15 years later, I found that you bet it's a thing. Your odds are diminished. What happened is the commander of the brigade, the whole big axis of central Lebanon, his name was General Avigdor Ben Gal, gave an interview to an Israeli newspaper, Kola. It was buried. You could barely find it, but I found it. And he told the story. He said that while he was on Jeep tour, Ehud Barak, who was then a major, I think, a captain, God knows in 82, went into the radio room and with the map in front of him, ordered a religious unit, armored unit, into a Syrian trap. 23 died, all to get the Labour Party back into power. And I'm not joking you. That's how bad. Remember, Zionism isn't one homogeneous movement. You've got the Labour Party who are just nasty. You've got what was once the right-wing Zionists, the Kherut, which are morally a whole lot better. And you've got religious Zionism, and they don't agree on many points.
That's true.
But one thing that pardon me?
No, the religions, they don't agree on any one point. I know that to be very true.
Well, it's not none of them agree on any one point, but Labor Zionism is vicious, and they will sacrifice the lives of Jews to get their political way. Ehud Barak became leader of the Labour Party because at that moment, Menachem Begin's downfall began. Once Sultan Yaqub was finished with, that was it for Begin. It was it for the war. Everything went sour after that. Now, the reason I say that is Ehud Barak is now the defense minister of Israel. This was his operation. He approved it behind the backs of the Knesset. Now, I've actually got a couple. Now, I was waiting for the right information to bullet on Ehud Barak before I wrote this article. I'm now 60 to 80% positive that Barak sent these soldiers in to create a fiasco so that Netanyahu and the Likud would be thrown out of power. And the peace treaty he negotiated when he was prime minister in 1999 would be put into power. As crazy as that sounds, if you're an Israeli, it is extremely plausible, hugely plausible. I'll write that within the next, maybe even tomorrow morning. I may just write it finally.
Okay. So I'll get a copy of it tomorrow?
Yes, you will. If I'm in a good mood, before I write, I have to be super alert. And, if you write when you're tired, you'll sound tired. You have to write first thing in the morning, and you've got to have your mind extremely focused on that and that alone. If that's the case tomorrow morning, you will receive it.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I'll look and see.
You're on my list now. You'll get it, I promise.
Okay. Well, listen.
So I summarized two issues, which, believe me, I could go on and on, but I think as summaries go, they were pretty well done.
Yeah, I think they were. Do you think in 2 minutes you could real quick
about
about the Holocaust that you see coming in Israel and what you mean by?
Well, that would be a missile war. I mean, the Hezbollah has about anywhere from 40 to 80,000 missiles. Syria, the same number, but these are guided missiles with all kinds of nonsense in their warheads. You've got Hamas have just pea shooter missiles, but you've got missiles from every corner aimed at Israel. In 2006, a crummy 4,000 missiles over a month cleared out northern Israel. No one was left. Wait till they see what happens when 10,000 missiles a day are aimed at the state. You've got yourself such a mess coming up, and every Israeli knows it. And I speak to Israel practically every day. Everyone knows the next war is going to really be a bad one.
Yeah, World War III, I think some people call it.
No, I would say the defeat of Israel in 3 or 4 days. I don't think it's World War anything.
Okay.
I think it's that Israel is in much more dire danger than it's been at least since 1948, the first war. It's maybe even more dangerous a situation, probably the most dangerous situation the country's ever been in.
I got you. Now, real quick, I want to mention, because I put it in your website, your link to the website in the chat room a couple of times there, but I want to go ahead and mention it. It's www.barryamish.com. And
Amish.
Chamish, it's spelled with a C-H.
Right.
And I heard somebody on another interview you did pronounce it said Amish, and that's where I got it from. I thought that the C-H was silent after I heard him, but he could have made a mistake, or I could have misheard him. And I want to thank everybody for coming. And I want to thank you for coming, Barry. And, been a pleasure having you here. And it's been really informative.
You did a nice job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Was there any final thoughts? Well, stream's about to cut in 16 seconds anyway.
Nothing I can say in 60 seconds. That one's too fast for me.
Too fast for me, too. Well, in that case, good night, everybody, and good night, Barry. And Barry, thanks for coming. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Backwards to when it all began. But let's start with the Giants.
Okay.
All right. There's a town in central Israel called Kadima. The first witness was a lady, Tzipora Carmel, April 20th, 1993. Her house lights up at 6:30 in the morning. She feels compelled to go outside. She's got a big field in her backyard where they grow oranges, and she looks outside and she thinks she sees a new fruit silo. And her first thought was, who would put up a fruit silo in the middle of the night? And then the fruit silo, this is a quote from her. I met up, by the way, all these women for my book. I didn't know I was writing a book at the time, but I met them all. She said the silo grew another story, and this is all happening nearly instantaneously. She looks to her right about 10 feet, and there she sees this 7-foot creature, and she knows what's going on. She's figured it out.
Barry, we've got a quick bio on you and, brought you over to America. So why don't we start in with the, I think you said you wanted to start in with the Return of the Giants or the Nephilim or something?
Yeah, I think your audience might be more attuned to that sort of offbeat side of my career, it's nonetheless high journalism. It's Return of the Giants covered a tremendous UFO wave in Israel that went from 1987 to 1999. And in the midst of this wave, by the way, it was front page news in Israel. There's nothing marginal about this wave. I would guess at least 10% of the population saw very, very vivid UFOs in that period. In the midst of that period, 1993 was the peak year, and it stopped at the end of 1994. The beings, or whatever, well, there's the beings, let's leave it at that, who were in these UFOs, made numerous visitations in Israel. And the witnesses, well, what can you say? They didn't know each other, but they all described the same giants. In all but one case, and we'll get to the exceptional giant later, but all the witnesses, all of them, works, were women aged 48 and 49 who lived mostly in a town and an area called Kadima. One lived to the south, about 50 miles from Rishon LeZion, but these women didn't know each other. They did not conspire to fool the nation. They all saw 7-foot giants. They didn't walk. They floated. Mostly, by the way, well, bedrooms were a major place of activity, and I have suspicions, by the way, of that. But nonetheless, what can we say? They were 7 feet. They wore tight, what everyone seemed to call neon clothing. Something about the clothing shone like neon. They had almost no nose, small mouth, black eyebrows was reported twice. Let's see, what else? They would calm the ladies down. Somehow or another, they would say, don't be afraid, I'm not here to harm you, and it worked like a charm. Women who should have been hysterical suddenly felt that these creatures were warm. Now, let's just go in order of 93, then we'll go back, and it's wearing what she thinks is like a beekeeper's hat. It covers his face, and she says out loud, take off your hat so I can see you, and it replied, by the way, they all said the same thing, it replied telepathically. All the women said the same thing. They heard the thoughts in their head. There was no moving mouth, nothing like that. It replied telepathically, I'm sorry, I can't do that, that's the way it is. And she watched it, and again, it's examining vegetation, which to me is fantastic. If these creatures came from untold miles through space to land in Kadima to examine vegetation, doesn't make any sense to me. Nonetheless, they all seem to be doing dumb things, and it tells her telepathically, go back into your house. And she obeys, and then, 15, 20 minutes later, she comes outside, and it's gone. But it left